Imagine an entire army of 185,000 men, wiped out in a single night by one mysterious force. Was it legend, or was it divine intervention? There was a tremendous war in ancient times that shook the Judahite kingdom to its core. Consider this scenario. During a dark night, the holy city of Jerusalem was besieged by a gigantic army led by a renowned conqueror. Is there a story about an angel that slaughtered 185,000 men in one fell swoop? One of the most incredible and surprising biblical stories is going to be revealed. In this video, we will look at the historical and cultural context, the events that led up to the supernatural intervention, and the great lessons that may be learned from this story. Keep watching if you want to see how this narrative affected people in the ancient world, and how it can affect people now, as well as how one angel can change the course of history. Join me as I unearth the truth about the angel that massacred 1,800,000 troops in one night. The political atmosphere in the Middle East was volatile throughout the later half of the 7th century BC. Under King Hezekiah's leadership, Judah's kingdom was besieged by the Assyrian Empire, a powerful military power of the day. Assyria was embroiled in territorial expansion as King Sennacherib aggressively deployed his war machine to conquer nations and cities. Because of its strategic importance, the Assyrians targeted Jerusalem, Judah's capital. With the presence of Solomon's temple, one of the most sacred places for the Israelites, the city functioned as both an administrative hub and a cultural and religious emblem. Hezekiah's primary tasks were to protect his people and preserve their spiritual essence. The fortress city of Jerusalem served as a bastion of religion and defiance. The people of Judah had a firm belief in God's power and protection, and they were deeply rooted in their religious traditions. However, the threat from the Assyrians was apparent and serious, and the villagers were overwhelmed with fear and concern. King Hezekiah, known for his unswerving devotion to God, implemented significant religious modifications, cleaning the temple of all idols and dedicating it only to the Lord's worship. Despite facing what appeared to be an overwhelming foe, he intended to strengthen the people's faith by encouraging them to rely in divine providence. The city remained ever vigilant, with its walls strengthened and resources hoarded in preparation for a possible long siege. Amidst the chaos, an image of the prophet Isaiah appears. Isaiah was an influential character during Hezekiah's reign because to his deep spirituality and vision. His very presence cast a ray of hope and wisdom over the king and his people. Isaiah was both a spiritual advisor and God's ambassador, offering both hopeful and terrifying messages. Isaiah had steadfast faith in God's might, which enabled him to prophesy in ways that often contradicted human logic. He declared that God would protect his people from all dangers, big or little. In their hour of need, his words provided hope and strength to the people of Judah by telling them that they were not alone. King Sennacherib, a confident and cruel ruler, drove his massive army towards Jerusalem. His previous assaults had been successful, with the conquering of cities and kingdoms, the levy of massive payments, and the sowing of dread. The siege of Jerusalem was just one of his many triumphs. In Jerusalem, things appeared dismal. Assyrian armies surrounded the city, cutting off all supplies in the expectation that the Jews would succumb to their starvation and misery and surrender. As the city was besieged, tensions increased on a regular basis. The siege created an environment of dread and uncertainty, and Hezekiah and his advisors were under enormous pressure. Hezekiah responded by taking both practical and spiritual activities. He repaired the walls, strengthened the city defenses, and prepared Jerusalem for a lengthy siege. Above everything he found solace in his religion. In a desperate cry for heavenly intervention, Hezekiah went to the temple. He was aware that Jerusalem could not, on a human level, withstand the Assyrians' might for long. As the Assyrians intensified their fear campaign, the siege remained. God's ability to defend his people was questioned in letters written to Hezekiah, which featured blasphemies and threats. His arrogance knew no bounds, and Sennacherib was convinced that capitulation was near. In the face of these dangers, Hezekiah became closer to God. In a passionate and desperate prayer, he took Sennacherib's writings to the temple and laid them before God. Realizing his powerlessness in the face of the Assyrian strength, Judah appealed to God for help. After Hezekiah prayed, God sent the prophet Isaiah to deliver a message of hope and assurance. God had answered Hezekiah's prayer, according to Isaiah's prophecy, and Sennacherib would be unable to enter Jerusalem. God promised the inhabitants that their city would be protected, and that the Assyrian army would suffer an unprecedented defeat. That evening, something remarkable happened. When an angel of the Lord descended on their camp, it resulted in the slaughter of 185,000 Assyrian troops. A strange power from above disrupted the awful silence of the night. As dawn broke, the few remaining Assyrians saw a landscape devoid of life. The Bible provides a plain yet impactful description of this event. Exactly that night, an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and smote down 185,000 Assyrians in their camp. When the rest of them awoke early that morning, they discovered all of these lifeless bodies. The effect was really powerful right away. The Assyrian army, which was before unstoppable, was destroyed. Sennacherib, who had boasted of his strength and authority, was humiliated and vanquished, forced to retreat in humiliation. God's miraculous intervention saved Jerusalem, and the people of Judah celebrated. But just what happened that evening?
How can we describe such a spectacular occurrence?
The devout saw it as a clear manifestation of God's work, a display of his power in response to their ardent prayers. The story exhibited faith and divine providence in striking ways, serving as a painful reminder that God can rescue even in the most catastrophic circumstances. The dawn brought a renewed sense of hope and trust to the people of Judah, as well as a vision of a destroyed enemy force. The heavenly intervention had a great impact on the nation's spiritual life, going beyond a mere military win. People in Jerusalem felt relieved. After days of anxiety and doubt, the city's residents could finally relax and be grateful. Previously besieged by constant attackers, the city was now safe within its fortified walls. This miracle increased the people's faith in God and reminded them that no matter how bad things became, God was always there to protect them.
A new sense of faith washed over Hezekiah. He saw an amazing manifestation of the blessings he had hoped for. There was a religious renaissance under his reign, and he was even more committed to following his forefathers' customs and rules. He re-energized Judah's prior religious changes, and his disciples became more devoted to God in worship and obedience. The event also had significant political ramifications. The collapse of Sennacherib placed doubt on the Assyrian presence in the region. When they began to doubt Assyria's invincibility, other nations began to question their own weaknesses. The narrative of divine intervention in Jerusalem quickly became folklore, a living myth that echoed throughout the Middle East. As a result of God's incredible power display, Judah and other nations recognized Israel's God's grandeur and sovereignty, while Jerusalem celebrated its freedom. Sennacherib returned to Nineveh in shame and humiliation. He returned with a beaten army and a tarnished reputation, bragging about his accomplishments and prowess. Sennacherib's humiliation severely damaged the Assyrians' pride. According to the Bible, Sennacherib's own sons assassinated him in the temple of their deity Nisroch after he lost. The treachery inside his own family symbolized the loss of power, which he prized so greatly. Following his death, Assyria fell into a period of internal warfare and instability, severely eroding the empire he had worked so hard to build. Sennacherib's death served as a reminder to Judah that those who violate God and his people will face dreadful consequences. The fall of the Assyrian king was interpreted as a manifestation of divine justice, demonstrating that God's authority extended beyond miraculous works to impact the fates of nations and kings. Countless theological interpretations have been proposed over the centuries about the story of the angel who slaughtered 185,000 Assyrian warriors. Biblical academics and theologians see this as a clear indication of God's omnipotence and justice. The narrative highlights God's omnipotence and ability to intervene directly and powerfully for the benefit of his people. The narrative is a poignant reminder that when we place our trust in God, he can perform miracles, even in the darkest of circumstances. He can perform miracles, even in the darkest of circumstances. Devotion and entire trust in God are essential, especially in the face of seemingly hopeless situations, as seen by the divine response to Hezekiah's request. Faith may save us in our worst hours, as this story demonstrates. Other theologians emphasize the concept of divine justice. Many think that the Assyrian defeat and Sennacherib's death were divine judgments for those who disobeyed and blasphemed God. God is patient and loving, but he is also just and will punish evil, as this scripture tells us. The Bible contains multiple accounts of the angel that slaughtered 185,000 troops. Other miraculous occurrences in the Bible demonstrate God's might in equally astonishing ways. In one such story, the Red Sea divided, allowing the Israelites to safely cross as Moses led them out of Egypt. But the Egyptian army was engulfed by floods. Another example is when God rained down fire and brimstone on the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah as punishment for its misdeeds. Similar to what happened with the Assyrians, these events demonstrate that God is sovereign, righteous, and capable of rescuing his people. When comparing these miracles, we can see a definite pattern of supernatural involvement at critical periods. Salvation and triumph were the results of believing in God and obeying to his call. But damnation and failure were the results of resistance and blasphemy. All of this goes to one thing: God is all-powerful and fair, which is the Bible's central teaching. The story of the angel who defeated 185,000 enemy warriors goes beyond a simple narrative of a supernatural event. This lovely reminder reaffirms trust in God's providence and fairness. This story teaches lessons about faith and trust in God, and it is based on Bible history and theology. Not only did this supernatural event save a city and its residents, but it also forever transformed Judah's history and the shared understanding of Christians. This narrative demonstrates the power of faith to bring unfathomable solutions and divine protection, even in the most terrible of circumstances. Viewers today should take heart from the story's message about the need of faith and trust during challenging times. It reminds us that God, like Hezekiah and Jerusalem, may have a dramatic and life-changing impact on our lives. We trust that this tragedy will strengthen our faith and remind us that God is always with us, ready to rescue and lead us. May this be so.